When first announced, it sounded like Babylon by Damien Chazelle was one premiere away from getting an Oscar. It's such an easy sell after all. An epic tale of old Hollywood, written and directed by the filmmaker behind hits like Whiplash and La La Land. And then there's the fact that hotshots like Margot Robbie and Brad Pitt were starring in the movie. Unfortunately, things didn't turn out that way. So what happened? Let's talk about it. First things first, Babylon bombs in debut box office weekend. In a post-weekend box office report, Deadline reported that the performance of Babylon hasn't been as good as most people had been expecting it to be in its first 4 days in theaters. Apparently, the film, with a reported budget of about $80 million by the way, went up in a blaze of fire at the domestic box office with an awful $4.85 million in the first 4 days. It's even worse knowing that the movie had been anticipated to make $5.4 million. And the cherry on top of it all is when you consider that Paramount is expected to spend a total of $80 million on the marketing for Damien Chazelle's film. It's clear that the studio was hoping that the film could earn at least $250 million worldwide to break even. And yet at this point, it's going to be really hard for the film to earn even $20 million domestically, which puts a lot of pressure on international audiences to embrace Babylon and help Paramount see a profit in theaters. Unfortunately, it's probably not going to happen. Next up, what went wrong with the movie? The main question that you must be asking yourself right now is what went wrong? And how is it even possible that a film that everyone thought would be way too big to even come close to bomb in such a spectacular fashion ended up doing so anyway? Well, first of all, what wasn't mentioned in the original announcement of the movie was the fact that Chazelle was working on a 3-hour film that has been described as cocaine-fueled in most reviews, mostly because the film is loaded with nudity and really ridiculous situations and gross out moments. And add all the middling reviews to that and you get the recipe for a film that is literally struggling to find an audience to cater to. Not to mention there's all that bad weather going on in most of the United States. Add the fact that there's a little film called Avatar: The Way of Water on top of it all, so it looks like there's not much audience left for Babylon. But even as counter-programming goes, it looks like the movie can't even lock down on that older audience who isn't interested in Pandora or Blue Aliens in 3D. Maybe if Babylon managed to rack up some more award nominations, including that Oscars recognition everyone had been expecting for the movie, there might be some hope left for a resurgence for the film. But as of right now, Damien Chazelle's newest film isn't really looking that great, financially speaking. Moving on, let's talk about the biggest movie flops of 2022. Okay, 2022 was a pretty good year for movies, with the release of exciting blockbuster films like The Batman and Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, bone-chilling horror films like Barbarian and Pearl, to really unique and hilarious comedies like Everything Everywhere All at Once, as well as The Menu. Not to mention, people got to go back to the cinema after a depressing 2 years of lockdown during the COVID-19 pandemic, so the global box office is slowly but surely climbing back to stronger numbers. Unfortunately, unlike these gems, some movies didn't do as well as the people behind them had been hoping to do in 2022, but this happens every year, and just like Babylon, some of them were really shocking. So let's get right into the biggest movie flops of 2022. First up, The Northman. Robert Eggers is a wide-ranging filmmaker best known for having a very unique, surreal style. He's written some of the most visually striking horror films in the past, such as The Witch, which was released back in 2015 and led by the lovely Anya Taylor-Joy, as well as 2019's The Lighthouse, starring Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. Now, 2022's The Northman positioned itself as an epic historical action film. Set in the 10th century during the reign of the Vikings, the movie follows the Viking warrior and disgraced Prince Amleth, played by Alexander Skarsgård, who is looking to get revenge on his evil uncle, Fjolnir the Brotherless, played by Claes Bang, for killing his father, King Arvandel, played by Ethan Hawke. Many years later, Amleth finally returns to his homeland as an adult to avenge his family's honor. The film also gets really impressive performances from Nicole Kidman, Bjork, as well as Willem Dafoe and even Anya Taylor-Joy. To be honest, the story by itself is pretty basic, but still, it's a stunning visual treat to see on the big screen either way, especially that climactic fight between Amleth and Fjolnir in the center of an erupting volcano. Unfortunately, the film was sent to Valhalla in shame at the box office. In the end, it only ended up making just a bit over $69 million on an almost $100 million budget, according to Box Office Mojo. Next up, Black Adam. With an A-list actor like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in the cast, this was a movie that everyone had been waiting for this year, and yet it didn't turn out the way most people thought it would. To be honest, the DCEU has been in a free fall for some time now, with people like James Gunn and Peter Safran recently taking over DC Studios in an attempt to reboot the franchise. This leaves all the upcoming DCEU movies in a pretty awkward position, which was exactly what Black Adam was in when it came out on the 21st of October 2022. Unfortunately, despite the hot-shot cast, Black Adam didn't hold up at the box office, despite all the efforts from Johnson to put out positive numbers in the hopes that a sequel could be made later on. Now, while the movie did turn a profit, earning $391 million on an estimated budget of $190 to $260 million, these numbers don't include marketing costs. Because of this, Black Adam has been labeled a box office bomb. Coming up, Strange World. Disney Animation hit a pretty huge bump on its road to success with a movie like Strange World. The craziest part about this is that it had literally the perfect voice cast, with stars like Jake Gyllenhaal, Dennis Quaid, and Lucy Liu working on it. The plot was pretty interesting too. The film follows a family of explorers who decide to set out on an adventure to an uncharted subterraneous land. Now, considering that the movie was made on a huge production budget of $135 million, it's pretty shocking to see how Strange World crashed and burned at the box office, with an embarrassing $66 million worldwide. Not to mention, both lukewarm reviews and friendly fire from Black Panther: Wakanda Forever killed any chances it ever had at the box office, signaling a pretty bleak future for Disney Animation. Following up, Lightyear. The COVID-19 pandemic affected the movie industry a lot, and that included Pixar. So many of its releases were pushed straight to its streaming platform, Disney Plus, where they got zero theatrical runs. Lightyear was the very first Pixar film to release in theaters ever since Onward back in 2020. Not to mention, Lightyear literally had Chris Evans voice the iconic character in the spin-off story of Toy Story. So, with so many things clearly going right for the film, how did things go so wrong? Well, it looks like things like poor marketing, the controversy over Chris Evans voicing Buzz instead of the original Tim Allen, and bad word of mouth sealed an early death for the movie. Unfortunately, Lightyear didn't perform as well at the box office as so many had hoped. It made $226 during its run, with a budget of only $200 million. And while Lightyear did at least make its money back, it hardly made any profit for Disney at all. Now for Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore. Even though J.K. Rowling's reputation hasn't been the best in the past lately, the fact remains that her Harry Potter franchise is still highly profitable. After all, there's still the always packed Wizarding World of Harry Potter, an attraction at Universal Studios in Los Angeles and Florida, an upcoming open-world adventure video game called Hogwarts Legacy, as well as Warner Bros. Discovery CEO David Zaslav confirming that Harry Potter will be a top priority moving forward. Despite these successes, one of the few weak areas of the Harry Potter world which hasn't done so well is the latest movie in the Fantastic Beasts spin-offs. The latest installment, Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore, made hardly $96 million domestically at the box office on a $200 million budget. Even accounting for global takings, it still barely made half of what 2016's Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them pulled in. Now, the Fantastic Beasts movies are set between 1926 and 1932, and are meant to follow the magizoologist Newt Scamander, played by Eddie Redmayne, as he tries to capture and study magical creatures in the Muggle world. However, during this time, Gellert Grindelwald is rising to power. On top of all that, the introduction of a young Albus Dumbledore, played by Jude Law, means that Newt's adventures have to take a back seat to the point that he becomes a supporting character in the franchise. Finally, Bros. Bros is a historic film in a lot of ways, but mainly because it is one of the first mainstream rom-coms to ever feature two LGBTQ leads, and yet the movie flopped at the box office. Bros only made $14.8 million on a $22 million budget. While there are many reasons why the film didn't hold up at the box office, Billy Eichner, who stars in the movie, says that it flopped because the movie is about two men in a relationship. He even shared his views on Twitter over the film's lack of financial success. Still, despite its box office failure, Bros received raving reviews from fans and critics alike. And that's a wrap for this video. Were you surprised about any of the movies on this list? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.